Okay, let us look at the following: communicating moral education in schools. Means of communicating moral education in schools. Means of communicating moral education in schools. By just reading on the blackboard, what is it that is coming in your mind? What are they trying to say?
How to bring about moral education. How to bring about moral education.
Okay. In a very simple way, let us say it. What they are trying to tell us here is that there are various ways of communicating moral education in the schools. There are various, which means there are many ways of communicating moral education in schools. Now, amongst those many or various ways or means of communicating moral education is by worship or through worship. The first way is through worship, and another way could be formal religious instruction sometimes. These are just to mention a few. I will explain more about these things. I'm just introducing it. I just wanted you to know what do they mean when they say means of communicating moral education in schools. So in a simple term, that word over here means ways, or in Chichewa they call it njira. It's meaning you can communicate moral education in schools. So there are also some principles which are guiding or which need to be followed when you are teaching morality and religion in some moral schools. And again, these principles, if properly followed, will promote the successful teaching of moral education. These principles, if they are properly followed, it means they are going to promote or to enhance a successful teaching of moral education. Now let us go in detail. So, means of communicating religious education in school. I've said in the introduction that there are quite a good number of them. The first one being through worship. The second one is school and discipline. The third one, formal religious instruction. Now, on worship, let us have a look at worship. What is it in worship? And how is worship becoming one method or one way of teaching moral education in schools? Worship. I hope you know the word worship. just to brainstorm. When you hear about the word worship, what does it mean?
Giving praise to something.
Supernatural being, something living. So you worship that one. Okay. All worship as one way or method or means of communicating moral education, it simply means that there is a direct relationship with the omnipotent God. And the religious worship, for instance, consists of the following. When you are worshiping, it means you are adoring, that's adoration. You are adoring, or that's adoration. Again, it simply means confession. You're confessing. You're confessing. At the same time, you are giving thanks to the omnipotent or the supernatural being or the being which you are believing in. And finally, what you are offering when you are worshiping, it means you are offering supplication. You are offering supplication. So there are about 4 things that are wrapped up in worship. There are 4 things that are wrapped up in worship. And these are adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplications. And supplication. In short, there are the following things: acts, the abbreviation of those things I've mentioned. A stands for adoration. C stands for confession. T, thanksgiving. And the final one is supplication. Supplication. All these 4, they are in worship. So worship as one way of communicating moral education has the following 4 things. Again, another way of teaching moral education is through school life. School life. School life. School life, what do they mean? They are saying most religions, include special ways of life. That's very true, but agree with me. Most religions include special ways of life and not just a mere set of dogma to blindly follow. No. Don't worry, if you're taking short notes, take short notes, because these notes I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you. So I'm saying most religions include special life, special way of life, and not just a mere set of dogma to blindly follow. Not at all. So which means each and every religion has got a set of probably their rules and their regulations or their beliefs, which members of those religions are supposed to follow. They don't just follow blindly, just for the sake of following. No. But they go through those set of dogma, and then upon understanding, upon believing in, that's when people follow. They decide to follow. So the school atmosphere must therefore be conducive. Any school atmosphere must be conducive for brotherly love, and again obedience. In a school also there must follow humility, good manners. What else? Respect for each other or individuals, and a life guided by self-control. All these things, they are included in school life. School life. That is another way of communicating morals in schools or in a school. I've also talked about formal religious instruction. Formal religious instruction. The teacher here focuses mainly on religion as an academic exercise. The teacher here is mainly focusing on religion as an academic exercise and makes use of various methods of teaching. When the teacher is teaching, he follows various methods. And here, on formal religious instruction, it means he focuses mainly on religion as an academic exercise. It is noted here that pupils might be sound academically in religious education and yet be morally bankrupt. Religion can just be taught, like even may I take a good example of Bible knowledge. Bible knowledge can be taught in a class, but that's not preaching because there are two different meanings there. What people can get when a certain verse has been cited and brought before people, that's preaching. Whilst in teaching, probably the understanding of these two scenarios can be different. When you are preaching, it means somebody is going to be touched in his heart or heart. But whilst teaching, maybe you are just getting the stuff just for the sake of passing exams without even believing in whatsoever has been brought to you. So these two scenarios, they are quite different. So no wonder you can be given a verse, you read on a verse, but after the completion of looking through that verse, you remain the same morally. You'll be morally bankrupt. So that's the difference of bringing instruction based on religion and preaching. They are quite two different issues altogether. I also did mention about principles and methods of teaching morality and the religion. Principles and methods of teaching morality and the religion. Principles. What are principles? Principles. There is no principles that what is it in your head? I sometimes like to say principles like the stand the person is standing on. Whether it's a school is standing on. That is Salamina. You stand on your own principles and nobody can remove you from whatsoever you are standing on. But rules sometimes can be used like rules, whatever you're standing on, nobody cannot move you from wherever you are standing on. Okay, so principles and methods of teaching morality and religion. So the teacher should appeal to both cognitive and affective domain or areas of the child if necessary or when necessary. What is the teacher supposed to do? He should note the following. 1, be punctual to lesson. We're talking about principles and the methods of teaching morality and religion. When a teacher is teaching moral education in a class, there are some principles which this teacher is supposed to stand on or to follow. The first one is you tell the students to be punctual. Be punctual to the lesson. Like the way I was telling you, you're fond of coming to classrooms late. So that's why I stand on my principles. When I want to deliver any kind of method in teaching and learning. So that's why I stand very much on these principles of telling you, please be punctual to a lesson, be punctual to a lesson. Again, a teacher will stand on what? You emphasize much on conscious of time. Be conscious of time. You tell his students to be conscious of time. You also tell them to adequately get prepared for each and every lesson. You emphasize much on adequate preparation, enough preparation. You also tell the students to be sure of neatness of chalkboard before writing. You saw me coming. Somebody forgot to rub whatsoever he applied on the board. And when I came here, I did likewise. So the teacher will always tell his students to be sure of neatness of chalkboard or board before writing. Again, we also tell them to make sure they are well prepared with right textbooks and writing materials. So the list is just endless. It's just endless. You can go on and on. So we have plenty of them. Probably through reading, you understand them. Now, what is the role of a teacher? The role of a teacher in the academic development of the child. What is the role of a teacher in the academic development of the child? Ulilwa mpozisi mchana. Omunga mwana. Ungani mapozisi. Okay, the first one is having a clear objective. A teacher is supposed to have a clear objective of his lesson. A clear objective. What does he want to get from the lesson? A clear objective. What is he trying to get? Or what is he again supposed to deliver? These two things, they should go together. The teacher has an objective. By the end of this lesson, I want my students to achieve A, B, C, D. Or by the end of this, or what do I want to do? I want to deliver A, B, C, D to students. So that by the end of delivery, my students should get or should achieve blah, 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 blah. So having a clear objective is role number one. So before a teacher starts teaching any lesson, he must find out what his pupils already know and what they need to know. That's the role of a teacher. He must be able to say to himself, at the end of this lesson, or as a result of this lesson, the students will be able to do and so on. Again, another role of a teacher is that a teacher, before going to a classroom, is supposed to have or to prepare for a lesson. And this preparation is done in or is applied in the lesson plan. Preparation of lesson. Preparation of lesson. Lesson plan. You need to plan for a lesson to avoid going to the jungle. So to be able to achieve his objectives, for a teacher to achieve his objectives and to avoid a waste of time, what is he supposed to do? A teacher must prepare for his lesson, for his or her lesson. And that one will make him to be effective. By doing that, he'll be in a position to be effective and he's going to deliver his lesson effectively. He has to use his own lesson plans, but by following the curriculum or the syllabus. By following the syllabus. Because whenever a teacher is preparing for a lesson, he's going to extract some topics or the topics from the lesson plan. And he's also supposed to use the textbooks, which are recommended by the syllabus or the curriculum. So his preparation or her preparation will usually take into account his own knowledge of the pupils. Whenever a teacher is preparing that, he should also bear in mind that, or he should know better his students than anybody else. He should be aware of what his or her students need. And again, when you're preparing for a lesson, you should also know the understanding or the perception of stuff by your students, the level of their understanding, the level of their understanding of the subject. So the first role is that one which I've just given you in the beginning. The second one is preparation of the lesson. And the third one, the role of a teacher, the third one is provision of motivation. It's the role or the duty of a teacher, any teacher, to motivate students. So a teacher is supposed to provide motivation. If you want your students to understand you better than anybody else, it's your responsibility as a teacher to motivate them. Use as many devices as possible to make your students want to learn, such as praise. Apart from praise, you can give them rewards or prizes. So those are some of the provision of motivation. In motivation, there are so many ways of motivating a student. And the moment you motivate a student, that student will fall in love with whatever you are teaching them or you are giving them. Another role of a teacher is to provide opportunity for active learning. Providing opportunity for active learning. That is, these days they call it student learner-centered approach. Learner-centered approach. That is to say, much of the talking shouldn't be done by you, a teacher alone. No. It's not advised. It's not advisable these days. It's not advised to follow a one-way kind of teaching that method is prohibited these days. They say much of the time should be given to students. Students need to actively participate in the lesson. That's why here they are saying it's the duty of the teacher, the role of the teacher, to provide opportunity for active learning. So the pupils will not learn much if the teacher does most of the talking himself. Talking, without giving a chance to learners. This one makes students not to love your teaching or your lessons. So the teacher needs to let pupils handle objects, observe facts, and arrange materials. Another role of a teacher is individual differences. Individual differences. What do they mean on this duty? A teacher should be the one who should understand each and every individual that they are born different. Any teacher is supposed to have this expertise because he's always with those students in class. He knows them better than anybody else. So individual differences. A teacher knows some students are brighter than the other, some are average, whilst others are slow learners. So it's the duty of the teacher to adapt methods, activities, and assignments to suit these diverse students. That's the duty of the teacher. And the usual thing to do is to group the children according to their abilities. The usual thing to do, or what is supposed to do, is that you're supposed to group them according to their abilities. That's the duty of a teacher. Another duty of a teacher is to maintain good relations with the pupils. Your pupils are not enemies, and when pupils look at you, they shouldn't look at you as a monster. There must be a good relationship between you as a teacher and your pupils. And this is very much recommended because if the teacher had the interest of his children at heart, he will strive to do the best he can for them. It's recommended. There must be a good relationship between teachers and students. So those are the means of communicating moral education in schools. I don't know if there is any question you can ask. If you don't have, then allow me to go to another lesson for today. We have heard about the means or the ways of communicating. We have heard about the ways of communicating. Now let us have a look at the methods of teaching. Methods of teaching moral education. Methods of teaching moral education. Methods of teaching moral education. Okay. According to research, a research was made on methods of teaching and the impact of methods of teaching. The research was made or was done on methods of teaching and to see the impact of those methods on teaching and learning process. And there is one author known as Balogan. In his book, he recorded the results of that research and the impact of those methods. And he's saying that for quite some time or for many years, there was one kind of method which dominated the scene. And this one is known as lecture method. It doesn't necessarily mean this method was or is left in the teaching. No, it's not left out. But it is still maintained as one of the methods in teaching. But this one dominated, previously, it dominated the scene. So after having realized the impact, direct impact of this method, then they changed or they added some methods. They added some methods to this kind of method which dominated the scene. Now today we want to have a look at these different methods and their impact. These different methods and their impact. But before we look at the methods in equation, they are saying nowadays there are multivarious methods of teaching, and as their teachers or as teachers are using them. As teachers are using them, there are quite a number of various methods of teaching as teachers use them. Likewise, there are many methods of learning which learners are preferring to use. Now the question would be, from what we have seen, somebody could probably pose a question to say, which is the best method? Which is the best method to use? Which is the best method to use? Now, the book which I've just referred you to is saying there is no any best method which can be used. But instead, all these methods are supposed to be combined in order to come with a tangible result. Not only one method. In teaching, you're supposed as a teacher to use different methods. Different methods must be used. Now, the book again, or the author, continues further to say, a good teaching should begin with the teacher having a clear picture of the exact changes he has to bring in the learner. A good teaching should begin with the teacher himself or herself having a clear picture of the exact changes he has to bring in the learner or in a lesson. And to do this, he has to question himself the following questions. He has to ask himself or herself the following questions. 1, to what extent is he familiar with? To what extent am I familiar with the topic I'm about to teach? So that is a subject matter. He's supposed to find out within himself, am I familiar with this subject matter or not? Because by doing that, he will be quite assured that he's going to deliver his teaching without any problem, because he has a knowledge of the subject matter. And again, what again is he supposed to ask himself or herself? He's supposed to ask himself about the objectives of the lesson. Objectives of the lesson. To what extent am I aware of the demands of the syllabus? What is the syllabus need from this lesson? So the objective, and again a teacher is also going to ask himself about to what extent am I aware of the characteristics of the group? Are they adolescents? Or which group is this? He has to learn them. He has to learn their individual differences. He must be aware of his learners. Are they bright students or average or slow learners? All these questions are supposed to be asked by or to be borne in mind by any teacher when he's going, and this is supposed to be done before he approaches the classroom, or before he enters the classroom. He's supposed to know all these things. Now, the various methods of teaching are as follows. I've talked about methods of teaching. So the method number 1, which is supposed to be used, more especially when you are teaching moral education, because we should not derail from our lesson. It's moral education. We're talking about moral education. So method number 1, which is supposed to be used when teaching moral education, is the project. The project. Which method is this? The project. So somebody can learn through the project. What method is this? Let's say, in this method, the so-called the project, the students may be grouped. You group the students in different. You group the students differently, and each group may be given a project to work on. You group your students differently, and as a teacher, you're supposed to give each group or to assign each group the work, assign them with a work to do or to work on. So each group should have a leader. If you have split it or you've put students into 4 groups, each group is supposed to have a leader. You've given them different topics to work on, and each group is supposed to have a leader who will see to the completion of that project which is given. Now, this kind of teaching has a problem. This kind of project or method of teaching has a problem. The problem could be not all members or students from that group or each group will participate. Not all will participate. Some of them will be playing, talking, doing unnecessary things, whilst others are busy doing the assignment. That is to say, this kind of method is encouraging laziness among other students. There are some who will be lazy, especially those who will be just talking, and without concentrating on what they have been given. Some will just be watching, others concentrating or doing the assignment. So it encourages laziness. Method number 2. The method number 2 is known as the film and pictures. Film and picture. Film and picture. Film and picture. This is the new method to the teaching and learning of education. It's a new method. So in this method, the teacher becomes the manager. Who is managing this method is the teacher. Was in the project one, was managing is the leader of each group, was managing. But in this group, the film and picture group, method, the teacher is acting as the manager. He has to prepare the place where the film will be taken. The teacher is supposed to prepare for a place where the film is supposed to be taken or shoot. Again, it is the responsibility of the teacher to prepare the mindsets of his students ready to the film shows. I don't know if you once did this, but the info forwards they apply this one. If you want to watch Macbeth, you learn through watching the film. And the teacher, sometimes he pauses if there are some discussions to tell or some points to highlight to students. It's done by the teacher. So this is another method. Another method of teaching is educational broadcasting. Educational broadcasting. And when we talk about broadcasting, we're talking about the radio and television. To broadcast, it means to disseminate information. Information can be disseminated through radio or TV, television. So religious teachers, or those teachers who are teaching from Bible knowledge or moral education, may take their students to radio or television stations to teach students aphunzitsi moral education or Bible knowledge anyambala ya school ulendo nawo kandi kuzodi yaje kuja kupina ku MPC ni students and they'll be given a room just like this one. You teach, they record, they shoot us, or they record us, and that lesson is going to be relayed. It's going to be relayed or beamed later. So the eyes come up Peter. Then so there will be relayed. The information which has been recorded there will be relayed later. And whilst you are home, students are back home, they learn from such a radio or television broadcast. Another method of teaching moral education is through the dramatization. Dramatization, like a drama or play, Macbeth. Dramatization is one of the methods of moral education and learning religious education. In this method, students will act and speak as they dramatize the story or event, just like what they do in Macbeth. So students who have to participate fully, the ones who participate fully is the students. The drama could be radio taped or video recorded or filmed, and this will afford the student the opportunity to make reference to it from time to time. So the moment they put it in a video or like a film, which means the students will be able to use that particular video or lesson from the video every now and again, time to time. So this method has so many advantages and disadvantages. Another method of teaching moral education is through demonstration. Demonstration simply means an activity based teaching. It's an activity based teaching. An activity based teaching. So it means it's a teaching based on an activity. You do something where the teacher demonstrates. To demonstrate means to show. The teacher shows or demonstrates actions with some objects. The teacher handles some objects whilst he's teaching, is showing those, is demonstrating. Like in mathematics, you take maybe an object, you do like this, like you write like an L. You're telling students, look at here. This is a straight line, which is joining a straight line, which is one of the lines is horizontal. The straight line is horizontal, and another one is vertical. Now, the angle which is going to be formed on those two lines will be 90 degrees. So it's demonstrating, it's showing students. So that's another method of teaching learners. Another method of teaching learners. The next method is known as the storytelling. You deliver a lesson through telling a story. You teach students through telling them a story, like the story of how children of Israel left Egypt for Israel. That's in Bible knowledge. In history, you tell a story of how Muhammad fled from Mecca to Medina. Mecca to Medina. You are telling them a story. So children will learn from that. So all children like stories. That's very true. Particularly if such stories are made interesting by the teacher. It's the teacher who can make a story to sound good for students to be interested in. So these stories must be linked to the student's own personal experience. It must be that link. So this method can be applied to teach different levels. Teach different levels of students and the topic themselves, different topics themselves. Another method of teaching moral education is through the trip, field trip. Field trip. Students can be fed or can be taken to somewhere else for the purpose of learning. Maybe to a mining company, to a forest, to a mountain, to a national park, game reserve, to the lake, just to appreciate what they see there, which is linked with their topic. That again is a method. The classroom is organized where you have visited, the place where you have visited. That's educational method again. That's education method again, or the method for teaching moral education. So, in short, those are the methods which students are supposed to learn, or to, yes, to learn, or to enjoy, or to expect when they are learning moral education. Or those are the methods which a teacher is supposed to deliver or to use when teaching moral education. The first one being the project method. The second one is the picture and the film and picture method. The other one is education broadcasting, which is done through radio and television. And the other one is the dramatization of a lesson. There's also demonstration of a lesson. There's also storytelling. And finally, the field trip. These are the methods. I don't know if you have, if there is any question. Is there any question? Very different. Let us finish the last one. The last one, let us finish this one. The last one is on challenges of teaching moral education. We have looked at the methods of teaching or communicating moral education. We also looked at methods. We just finished looking at the methods of teaching moral education. Now I want us to go to challenges of teaching moral education. Challenges. Challenges as problems. Problems which teachers face when teaching moral education. Problems of teaching moral education in the Malawian schools. There are many problems facing teaching and learning of moral education in schools. Such problems may include the following. One, takeover of missionary schools, as a result of which the teaching of moral education is no longer compulsory. Takeover of missionary schools. Takeover of missionary schools, as a result of which teaching of moral education is no longer compulsory. What do they mean? Here, what they're trying to say is that you're finished writing that point. Takeover of missionary schools, as a result of which teaching of moral education is no longer compulsory. That is to say, previously, when the Azumos came, no, I'm explaining that point. When the Azumos came, we had our own methods of teaching moral education, maybe in the society, not necessarily in schools, but in the society or communities. People used to teach one another morals or morality. And again, when the schools started, because the schools were started by the missionaries. So in their schools, they put this moral education. Students were learning moral education. But it reached a certain time whereby these schools were taken over. They were taken over by probably the government or whosoever took those schools from the missionaries. Now, this teaching of morals stopped, was cut. Whereby azungu amakuza zikaligozayo. Usabe, usamamo kalasi ndrai. Andukumva ndikwana kumasakira chikaligo kukao kumachoro. Ndiyazungu aja masuwa aja walanda. Nda aboma, nda private, and when the cyber, more especially the government. There was that laxity. Kungo taidia. Utaida kumeni kujifana pesa kuti ana aliyense kumeni waimvelera kuchita zake. With moral education, abo has been eroded. Yakogoroga. Wachitika erosion ya moral education. So that is a challenge. See what I mean? So take over missionary schools as a result. Take over school. But so then somebody moral education, I mean, those missionary schools used to teaching. Then these people who have taken these schools from the missionaries, they stopped teaching moral education. So that was a challenge. Another challenge is inadequate qualified teachers of moral education, which means schools. In schools, the schools are lacking well-trained. They are lacking well-trained. They don't have well-trained teachers who did this, who studied moral education. Another challenge is societal respect for wealth. These days, people are respecting wealth, chuma, than teaching moral education. Another one, government's preference for science and technology subjects. These days, you can agree with me, much emphasis on subjects is put on science and technology and not in these other subjects. There is also parental preference for some professions such as medicine, law. What are parents encouraging their students? Their learners? they're telling them, if you go to school, please study medicine, study engineering. You can't hear them or study those subjects which are related to maybe they are related to religion, religious studies and the like. They ask you, you want to become a pastor? You see, that's the perception they have. That's the perception they have. So parental preference also has contributed to the erosion of this teaching of moral education in schools. Again, moral education is not readily available as a course of study in the tertiary institutions. Moral education. If you go to colleges, how many colleges are offering this course? Very few, probably 1% of the tertiary education or colleges they are pursuing in this one. So for today, let us stop there. All these files I need to give you for the sake of your course. Thank you very much for listening.